Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you my review of the Godox AD200 Pro Mark II. Now, the ADD Pro Mark II is an update to Godox's popular AD200 Pocket, and I use that term loosely, flash that blends portability with relatively high power, 200 watt-second output. I reviewed this early one in 2019, and as I have spent time with the new Mark II version, I can see that there's a lot of key upgrades that makes the flash more versatile, more easily controllable, and it comes at the same price of $349 as the previous model. It has the shape of an on-camera flash, kind of the same profile, but this is an off-camera flash that will require a flash trigger to actually use it. Now, it's optimized for use with Godox's new X3 triggers, but it will work with their older triggers too. So let's talk about some of the upgrades that they have built into this. One of the key ones comes with improving the airflow for the cooling. We now have a motorized fan that is on both the Fresnel head and then also the bare bulb head that goes on there. And so that gives you a significant improvement in terms of the cooling and thus the amount of flashes you can get before the unit will go into overheat. It also has a vastly improved modeling light performance. And so it's improved in terms of the output. It's brighter. You have much more control of it now. Rather than just being an on and off situation, you have full control in 1% steps from 0 to 100. You have the ability to control the Kelvin value from 2800, quite warm, all the way up to 6000, which is quite cool, with obviously incremental steps all along the way. So a much improved that, and more interestingly, they have also improved the bare bulb head as well, to where it has the similar modeling light and now in a little bit more of a ring light type configuration, which could be an interesting side application for that. Another key improvement that they've given is that there is now an LED indicator light on the side that will allow you to identify which flash is being used in which particular group. And so you can assign different values, and so as you look across varied flashes, you can see a visual representation of which flash is in what group, and so it can help you for individualized control over them. You also now have the ability to do a full wireless sync with the X3 trigger. It's only compatible with the X3 trigger, but if you run through that, if you're not comfortable kind of setting up your settings more individually, you can do a quick sync in that way and make sure that this trigger is paired with this flash, so on and so forth. One of the huge improvements to me that I had to go back and realize just how much it was improved is the vast difference when it comes to the menu and the LCD screen. Going back, the old Flash's menu system is really primitive and low contrast, difficult to see, whereas the new one by comparison just really looks fantastic. It's very bright, it's very easy to navigate. It really is kind of a higher level instrument in that regard, much more professional in terms of navigation and much easier to use. Another thing that they have added to this is that if you are looking for even quicker flashes, they have added a fast charge port where you can hook up a separate Pro Pack, which is going to be obviously a separate accessory, but a Pro Pack battery pack that will allow you to fire even faster and of course for longer as well. You also have a little bit more precision when it comes to manual adjustments. And so you can now do as precise as 1/512th measurements. And so it just gives you a little bit more control over the output. And so definitely some pretty key upgrades to the overall handling and performance of the flash itself. So let's talk about some things that I like. I really do love that new screen and the new menu. It is much improved, much easier to navigate, and much easier to kind of figure out how to change the setting that you particularly want. And of course, it's also much easier to actually visualize and see at a glance, whereas before you're going to have a much more complicated situation. I also really enjoy the improved versatility of the modeling lights and how that both the Fresnel and bare bulb heads are improved. The active fans are definitely better in terms of being able to get more actual flashes before you get into an overheating mode. Now, frankly, I'm rarely using in a kind of situation where I'm just, strobing at high power again and again and again and again and actually running into that. But some of you that are operating, particularly maybe in a studio type setting where you're just hammering off a lot of flashes, you may have run into overheating issues with the previous flash, and you're going to find that you have much higher threshold. And from the tests that I've seen, that's going to be particularly true if you're using HSS, high-speed sync flashing, where this can almost double the output of the older one. The difference using the Fresnel head is a little less pronounced, or kind of typical TTL type flashing. But if you're moving into the HSS, you will see definitely a difference. I also really appreciate the fact that the charging has been streamlined here. The old charging, even though the batteries are similar, the old charger had this big charging brick along with, a typical AC cord. And so by the time you put together this whole configuration, you've got quite a large assembly. Whereas the newer flash has this very compact little USB-C powered, and it gives you a little AC adapter. And so by the time you run just a USB-C to USB-C cord between the two, you have a very consolidated package there. And so that to me is just a big practical improvement. I would like to see them actually take it a level higher and just to incorporate the USB-C charging right into the battery itself. I've seen it done even with, say, camera batteries, and so I think it certainly would be possible for them. And that would just allow them to even further simplify the process to where if someone had multiple batteries, they could just pop off a battery, put a USB-C, charging cord right into the battery itself and be charging on the fly. It would just eliminate a little bit of the additional kind of clutter that's in the bag itself. So let's talk about some things that I don't like. Once again, this shape, the emphasis is that, well, it's a pocket flash. You have to have really, really huge pockets for that to actually slide into. And so while it's a little bit more streamlined to form factor for portability, it also means that you are much more restricted when it comes to using adapters. And so once again, we're having to go to an adapter like this if we want to get into a Bowens type mount situation. Obviously, that really kills the overall portability of the flash itself if you're having to use an adapter like that to get into Bowens mount modifiers. And unfortunately, the changes to this head in terms of the cooling and then even more noticeably the change into the bare bulb head means that any of the existing modifiers you might have had for the AD200 Pro previously, none of those are likely to work with the new flash unit. And so that's going to be frustrating for those of you that maybe have made some investments into the system and now you feel like the investments you've made are going to be lost. One other thing in that, because we've moved to more of an active rather than a passive cooling here, it means that you really need to leave the flash on to let that fan run for a while if you've really gotten the flash hot. Otherwise, it's going to take a lot longer for that head to cool down because it's not designed to have the same amount of just passive airflow through it. It's a little more sealed, and so heat is going to be retained in there if you don't leave the flash on and allow that actual powered fan to run a little bit. So just something to keep in mind. So my conclusion is this. I used the AD200 Pro Mark II flash for a couple of different portrait sessions, and it worked just like I expected it to work. In that the power was good. It was fairly easy to control from the actual triggers themselves. And I was, experimenting this time also with using, putting Nikon into the mix. And so something that I've not previously done. But what I found that in my portrait sessions is that I was able to get the light that I wanted and shape it roughly in the way that I wanted. And so I have really no concerns. I've been using Godox flashes now for, I would say, not quite exclusively, but nearly exclusively for about 6 years at this point, and I've never had one fail on me. Of course, every new generation of trigger that comes along, you have to learn the ergonomics of how you select control, and this one has moved to, the new X3 has moved to much more of a touchscreen type interface, and so you have to become more familiar with how to navigate to where you want on it, but overall quite easy to use. And one thing I like because of the compact size of this one is that once you've actually taken the battery pack out and you're carrying it in the flash itself, this actually pops really nicely down into the slot that was designed for the battery. And so now you can have your trigger right in the original pouch with the flash unit itself. Now, I will say this, that if you already own the AD200 Pro and you're comfortable with it, you're comfortable with navigating, and maybe you don't need the modeling light to the same degree, maybe you've invested in some modifiers for it, then I don't know that there's really a huge compelling reason to upgrade to the new AD200 Pro Mark II. At the heart, it's still the flash unit with the same power output. And yes, because of better cooling, you may get more flashes before it overheats, but you're going to get largely the same performance. And so I don't know that it's necessarily warranted under that circumstance. But at the same time, while this has always competed with more expensive flashes because of the power that you have for the price you're getting it for, the new Mark II version at $350, it's not just competing on price, but now I think it's even more competitive on merit. Not just in the power output, but also in the feature set and the control scheme that you have. It's much more compelling and I think much more competitive with more expensive units. So at the end of the day, it's a pretty easy recommendation to me if you're in the market for a flash and you're not already invested in the original AD200 Pro. If you want more information, you can check out my text review that's linked in the description down below. There's also some buying links there where you can either explore a little bit more thoroughly, but also you can get good deals on this unit as well. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day and let the light in.